Good morning and a very warm welcome to the CUBO Winter Conference 2021, I think it is. So it's been a strange couple of years and I've lost track. So first and foremost, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to attend this morning's opening session. A little bit of housekeeping, and for those of you who are going to attend some of the sessions over the course of the day, you'll hear my voice on numerous occasions saying lots of similar things. So, but just to kick us off, these events for CUBO are not possible without the support of our partners. So we would especially like to thank Campus Life, Co-op and Unite Students for their support in coordinating, facilitating today's event. Very much appreciated. I need to advise you all that the sessions over the course of the day will be recorded. And as in previous years, we have a Twitter competition running over the course of today. So I'd like to say for prizes that money can't buy, I would be lying in that regard. So, but there are some prizes available for the most prolific tweeter or Twitterer, whatever the phrase is, utilizing the hashtag CUBO Winter 2021. That's hashtag CUBO Winter 2021. The details in terms of that hashtag, if anybody forgets it, are on the CUBO website also. Winners of the CUBO Twitter competition will be announced at the final session today, which will be from 4:15 onwards. We like these events as much as possible to be interactive, so we would ask that you enter into the spirit of the day, utilize the Q&A functions that are in and around all of the sessions. You know, I think it's really important. We want to hear from our members. We've got some interesting and insightful sessions over the course of the day, and your interaction in those sessions is paramount to ensure that we all get the most out of them. So we also have a chat feature which is available, and it's available by the portal called the discussion forum. So let's take the opportunity to interact with colleagues over the course of the day also. And additionally, we have a meeting hub. So in those occasions where there is downtime over the course of the day between sessions, we would encourage you to log in via the meeting hub, which can be accessed from the conference homepage, and reach out to colleagues that maybe you haven't had the opportunity to speak to over the course of the last 6 or 12 months, and reach out to partners too. So it's really important that we do that. I think that's probably it from me. So at this point in time, it gives me a very great pleasure to introduce Joe Hardman, Director of Commercial Services at Lancaster University and our CUBO Chair. Joe, over to yourself.
The first thing I need to remember to do, as ever, is unmute myself, which is the starting. Yes. So the first thing I need to apologise. It's just me today. Jan would have been here, but unfortunately Jan's not well. So last minute, I'm now doing the entire CUBO strategy update for today. And the first thing is obviously welcome to everyone. There's over 300 people who've booked into today. It's really great. And I think, you know, this ability to, you know, we would never in real life events in the past be able to get this number of people to the winter event. It would normally have been around 100 people. So it's fantastic to be able to engage more people than ever in this, and particularly welcome to those people who, for it's your first time here. So to start off with, back in as a bit of an update on CUBO and our strategy and where we're going. Back in 2018, we set aside a 5-year strategy. And if you really want to, you're welcome to go and look. It's on the website and it's been updated, and look at that about CUBO and it's on there. But with all decent strategies, they only you actually need to do something, and one of the things you need to do is review them and make sure they're actually up to date. And obviously, COVID's had a really significant impact on the sector and what we're doing. So early in 2020, and again this July, we've been reviewing what we're doing and updated the strategy. And I would suggest really do go and look at it, because it's a strategy to support you as members, and so and your input for future updates and what we're doing is really important. But I will just quickly, you know, talk about what our mission and aims, and word for word go through it, just to remind you in case you've forgotten. I'm sure it's engraved on a little card you carry around with yourselves about what our mission is. But it's to lead and promote the excellence and develop in the development of campus life and the student experience through our unique ability to integrate commercial activity across the higher education sector. We are uniquely positioned certainly during COVID, and I'm sure I'll come back to this, is, we saw that student experience was incredibly important. And, all credit to a lot of people, no doubt on this call, who were delivering food, who were dealing with rent refunds, dealing with people arriving, dealing with self-isolation and all those things through the year. So we do have that ability. It's rather boring. I will always go on. It's not just about the bottom line, although the bottom line always helps, as our Director of Finance will regularly tell me. Our aims as an organisation is to connect members, and obviously today is an example of that, support professional development, and hopefully today really is about that opportunity to, through events, to actually share insights into what's going on. And I said earlier to one of the speakers, this really is about the background. The Winter Conference in particular is very much about hopefully giving you a really good basis and understanding of what's going across in some critical areas in the sector. So we're aiming through training, research and sharing best practice to connect our members. We work with other organisations and companies that share our ethos, and Phil's already mentioned a number, and I have to say I've forgotten a number of the ones who are our sponsors today, but they are critical because actually it's not just about the fact they're sponsors. A number of those organisations I have personally worked with who actually give us insights on a day-to-day basis on how we actually deliver excellence, how we make sure we're giving value for money and support that wider university mission. It's really important for us, another of our aims is to enable members to use our management skills and business acumen to deliver effectiveness and income and enhance universities. And I think that's something that we do relatively uniquely, I like to think, bring to universities. It's that connection between that real world commercial practice and actually how you make what are quasi-public institutions more effective in their delivery. And I think the final of our aims is to lead in terms of advocacy for delivering a really high quality and innovative campus life experience. And I know later James in particular will be talking about the Res Life, which is really being recognised as so important. And so for CUBO, we do feel we've made progress in all areas. We've set our priorities for the coming year. They have been impacted by COVID. Today is online. We're very optimistic for a real life event in July, and we're learning to be flexible. I mean, certainly one of the things that has been a major change for us is that in between, and certainly with Sarah Clayton coming on board in terms of being able to deliver roundtables and other events that can be actually put together in a very short period. A member says there's an area that interests me. We've talked about postal services, which is one that's been close to, well, not my heart. I think it's one I've really rather not have been anywhere near. How we've dealt through the pandemic with all kinds of aspects of the pandemic. But there's a huge range of things. And I think the other thing with that is our partners have been really helpful because actually they've brought specific insights and they've run roundtables which made a real difference. And we are actually a small association. But we do represent a significant and important sector within HE. Certainly, within my area, the commercial activity actually is of the university is 15 to 20% of university turnover. These are really, really important parts of universities. So we can actually have a really significant impact, and we need to be ambitious about what we're doing to support our members and the sector to make ourselves better. So CUBO actually has three key themes, which you'll find again if you look at our strategy. You'll find them there, and they are to connect, develop, and lead. And so I'll go through these. So connecting and the conferences that address key HE themes, like today, are incredibly important. The downside is what we're not doing is at the moment as well as we can is that face-to-face connection, that networking. Yes, if the forums are really good for doing that, but there's not quite the same for going, oh, by the way, how did you? What are you doing about this? And that conversation when we actually come together is incredibly important. So again, looking forward for the future. But we do connect through these events, and as I said, we've been doing a lot more this year. That flexing between digital and physical, the digital has really helped us. I mean, I regularly talk about, my phrase is COVID bonuses. You know, there's been lots of stuff that's been bad, but that flexibility and that, I have also joked, people may have heard this, that actually COVID is entirely down to Bill Gates, and that's the reality. Teams came along at just the right time to make sure we could all actually operate. So yes, it is really Bill Gates who's behind it all. But no, seriously, the timing actually was different. If you think about the technology a few years ago, we really couldn't have risen to what was an enormous challenge for us. We've had a really active membership, and we've had about over 1,000 people who've been involved in some will be the same people, obviously, through forums, special groups, and round tables that have really helped us move things forward. Those partnerships that I've already mentioned have also been involved in the round tables, which I, as I said already, I think really add to what we're doing. We're really keen, and we are working on how we provide better information through online libraries. And one of the things I'd actually say is, if you've got something that's really good you want to share, you know, boast of it, tell us about it, tell us what you're doing. We're more than happy to share those things and share those really good stories. But also, we're taking a membership of UK Hospitality, which will also give us a further access to resources, which we will be able to share you online. I mean, one of the things we've certainly missed is that international connection over the last few years. Well, actually, it is nearly a few years, 18 months, getting on for 2 years. And the partnership, however, the partnership with the QOI actually still gives us, and particularly around Res Life, online resources and an ability in terms of learning. In terms of connecting, one of the things that's happened recently, and that this is probably in the last month, I know certainly in Scotland, we've now have 3 national groups that are now beginning to meet. Scotland is well underway because the Scottish government were moving at a slightly different space, possibly to the UK government on what was going on, and in different ways. But also, I think one of the things which was very significant was that the Scottish government did actually much more actively and directly engage with the HE sector, which meant that we could talk to them about what was going on in accommodation. And a real thanks to, you know, I'm sure go to those people in Scotland who've been leading that from Scottish members. But on top of that, we're now putting out feelers for a Welsh group, and we have a Northern Ireland and Irish group that's going to stay up, because in each of these areas, clearly there are both commonalities in terms of government, but also in terms of location, and that on top of that we do have other regional groups that will be the regional groups as well as the national groups that will be meeting, and certainly the London group has been particularly important. We've been building on our national links in terms of connecting ourselves. We're working increasingly closely with the Sizer, Buff, Dug and Ord in terms of what's going on, and we had a successful Places and Spaces webinar in August, which was really good in terms of connecting people. And one of our key things for us is moving forward in terms of that, is in terms of research for, and hopefully you're all currently filling in your benchmarking survey work. And if you're not, you have someone in your team who is. And I really would plead, do fill it in. I have to say there's some of the questions that I've gone through and gone, I don't think we can answer that. If you can't answer everything, or actually more to the point, if you don't want to answer everything, please do fill it in. It's incredibly important. It's an absolutely key document for us in terms of how we share, what's going across the sector, and will help you within your institutions in terms of seeing what's going on against other people. And I think this for the future is something we want to develop more and more. It's had a reset post-COVID. I think the other thing would be useful to have some feedback about how you think it is. We've done a lot of government liaison in terms of connecting. So we've worked with I keep on the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities, which does sound, it's a little bit of a mouthful, DHLUHC. But actually, that's been really, really important. And also with UK and ScotGov in terms of those outside liaisons. So whilst we weren't entirely successful on influencing certainly the UK government around self-isolation, we did get credit for the work that we did, and we did actually get some input what's going on. And I think the other thing for us, which one of the things we did early on, was actually we opened up our online to non-members in HE and FE sector to actually help during that period. I mean, if I'm honest, it also enabled us to advertise our wares to people and for people to see us. But I think it was really important when COVID hit for us to be in a position where we could actually support those people, and particularly some of the smaller institutions who wouldn't normally join, but they could then take part in those conversations. So develop. Yes, I've still got time. So develop. We now have a new board role that we've created for learning and development. And the idea with this is we've always had learning and development as an issue, but we've created a very specific, and the idea is then to actually have a working group that assists the person, a bit like the conference team that Phil so ably leads. The idea is to create a real program of activity throughout the year, and as we come out of COVID, to do more and more, both online and in the real world, either directly or with partners. So in some cases, we've worked with UHS in the past, and they've certainly done a really good course, and I would recommend it on company directorships, but also with a QOI and other training organisations. And we will look for partners. So again, if you see any great training out there that you think we should be doing or partnering with, please tell us. And we will deliver this through conferences, study tours, roundtables, special groups. We now actually have quite a few special groups: Res Life Marketing, Soft FM, contract catering, conferencing, and finance. I think when I first got involved a number of years ago, I think there was finance and marketing. That was it. And at the behest of members, we have set those groups up because people have said, look, we want to come together to discuss our particular area, or a particular area that suits us. And to support this, we will also look at the ideas along that formal training around mentoring as well, and where we can do that, because actually bringing people into the sector, new people, brings in fresh blood. That's really great. The HE sector can be a little interesting and challenging for those people outside. And I think it's really great if we can help that. But also for those people who are coming from outside the sector, how they can help us, and those of us who've been in the sector for a long time, to look outside and look better. So mentoring is an incredibly important thing for us to do. And on top of that, we will then be producing guides and templates to make sure, and further online resources. But I think absolutely critical on this for me is your feedback. If we're not doing the things that you want, tell us. If you went to something and it wasn't quite as good, don't pull your punches. Tell us, don't break our hearts. Tell us nicely, but let's get the right things done, not the wrong things done. So it's really, really important that we get that feedback from you. And so finally, on this section, in terms of leading, it's really important that we're also seen to lead and increase the profile, and it's not a self-aggrandisement. I know sometimes for me it feels like that's what it looks like you're trying to do, but actually it's the importance of what we do to providing the campus life, and how actually what we do impacts on students and staff and visitors' lives, and how we can make, slightly evangelical, how we make the world a better place. We can do that, and I think it's really important. And how we see that, how we provide sector guides, how we look for that best practice and share that. Also, when we're working with others, so that we're seen as someone. So we worked with Usha over the health and safety around COVID guidance, and that was a really, really good in terms of being seen as co-leading on something where they had let's not pretend they had the absolute detail on the expertise around the health and safety, but we could actually bring that experiential element about what it actually meant for students living in accommodation in particular. So it's really, really important that we lead on these initiatives. And there's a number of areas. There's really 3 areas that I think are either new or refreshed, I'd like to call them, in terms of what we're leading. So in terms of sustainability, some of you may have noticed, and we know some people have applied for a new sustainability role. Sustainability has been on our portfolio for a board portfolio for a number of years. But we're about to appoint a new board member, and we think that's a really great opportunity to sort of do almost a reset. Look, everyone knows COP26, it's boring to go on about how important we know this is. And it's really, really important that we do a reset and that we actually look at what we can do. And it's both, yes, about how CUBO is more environmentally friendly. I mean, I certainly think, coming together for real world events is incredibly important. Refer to meaningful travel. It is important sometimes to come together, but sometimes it's not. So we look at what we do, but it's also looking for that best practice, looking at how we share resources, look at how we work more effectively, and also in particular working with EUAC about how the sector is moving forward. So sustainability is going to be a theme we'll keep on hearing about. We're also particularly keen to increase diversity in the sector and see how and in how CUBO operates. We need the best people to provide the best services, and this is about taking equality, diversity, and inclusion really seriously. It's not a flag. It's about what you do about it. And to this end, it will sound a bit like a flag. We have a board member now who has specific responsibility, and we are in the process of developing a policy to look at how both we as an organisation, but also support equality, diversity, and inclusion across the sector. And what will be really important is once that policy is in place, that you help us make it live, and that we work together. It's not merely something that's on a back shelf. It's something that actually really matters. And finally, on this, we've also created a board member responsibility for the FE sector. We only have a limited number of FE sector members, and in general, the scale and style of commercial operations is different. But as things change, this is likely to become more important. But also, we have small HEs as well. That it is really important that those FEs that actually can find support and learn from us and engage with us, we actually listen to them and what they may well want to do. So I look at the clock. I have a little bit more time, so I think I'll say that's hopefully CUBO updated, and hopefully I haven't been too quick, but I'm going to take chair's privilege and make a few personal observations about the sector, and hopefully may echo a little bit about some sessions, and hopefully I won't be entirely contradicted in what I'm saying, but you know what, it's all about learning, and that's the point of today. I mean, one of the things for me that COVID has done is actually, on top of creating a real need for reflection and an opportunity for reflection, is actually come back and emphasise that there's actually two key commercial transactions that take places within universities. I'm sure someone will tell me I'm wrong, and there's somewhere else there's something else. But fundamentally, a student chooses to come to the institution, and secondly, they choose to live in our accommodation. Those are the two key things. This is, at a very conservative estimate, this is £15,000 a year, and can go up to £100,000 a year if you're talking about some international students. This is really very, very large sums of money. Selling cups of coffee, whilst important, are not the key financial transaction. And whilst we absolutely need to make sure they work as well as possible, and there are bits of our business which are, I'll be honest, pure profit making, it's really, really important, and I think has re-emphasised very heavily, and certainly my experience at Lancaster, is our role in delivering a really great campus experience. Yep, we shouldn't be losing lots of money, but what we need to do is make our campuses really, really engaging. There was a standing joke last year during COVID that my job title had changed to Director of Charitable Services, as we were giving away so much money and instead of making any. But I think this is I think an opportunity for us to look at that experience. I think some challenges coming forward, and we'll hear them today. What's the future of higher education? I'm really interested to see what happens around international students in particular. We know, and everyone was talking about the demographic dip. Well, the demographic dip, we're now coming out the other side. let's see what happens. But actually much more, how does the UK look as a place to come? And regardless of what COVID is, regardless of Brexit, there's a whole load of things that say, are people going to travel? What are we going? Are over-reliance? And I think, let's be frank, it's an over-reliance on China for international students, but we see the new Indian students numbers growing significantly. What's the impact on that? So the future of higher education is fascinating, and there's talk later on that. I think I'm really looking forward to listening about the high wage economy, particularly at the moment where I know a lot of us are experiencing the staff scarcity problem, and particularly around, I would say certainly for someone like us in Lancaster, where we're not in a major metropolitan area, we've always struggled slightly with some of our recruitment. But actually, this is going likely to become acutely over the short term. I'll be very interested to see what the impacts of the high wage economy might be. I think one of the things later is talk about student accommodation, and I've been involved in the NUS Unipol accommodation cost survey recently, and one of the things that struck me, and it's the preponderance of people students to choose on suite rooms, and that's gone up under COVID, understandably in a way, but actually there's something about a world in which people seem to fear living with people. And I think there's something that we can really look at, and the res life stuff around creating community and actually making people comfortable in other people's company is a really important thing that the res life can do. For me, one thing I'm going to finish in a second, but it's the agile working for the future is certainly having a short-term significant impact on the way our campus is currently operating. It's not particularly the students, it's the staff who are more agile. Different universities have taken different approaches, but we're certainly seeing that on a day-to-day impact on currently. But as we come out fully out of COVID, what does that look like? Do people resort to living in their little bubbles, or do they move on? And I can highly recommend E.M. Forster, The Machine Stops, if you want to have a look at a short story dystopian future of everyone living in bubbles. But I think it's really important, and there's major opportunities there as we do operate differently. How do we engage with businesses? How do we make sure for our conferencing team, which at one level people is struggling, but we're seeing much higher numbers of, certainly we are, and I was talking to someone else yesterday, much higher levels of bed and breakfast because people aren't going abroad. So we've had high levels of bed and breakfast. How does agile working work in terms of businesses? When you've got a business that doesn't want an office, well, we've got lots of space. How do we actually work with those people? And I'm getting nudged on this, and I haven't even mentioned Peppa Pig. So I've obviously failed dismally on this, but sorry, my ramblings at the end, Boris would be proud of me. And I think the important thing to say is finally, have a great day. This is a fabulous opportunity really to understand some bigger things and get away from your desk, even if you're sitting at your desk, get away from the day-to-day grind and listen to some really inspirational people tell us about things. And I really do looking forward to seeing you all in July 2022 in real life. Thank you very much.
That's great. Thank you very much, Joe. Much appreciated. So, and yes, thank you for heeding the gentle prod there as well. So I think probably need to wind it up now. I think that's been my stock standard phrase to use over the course of the day. Thanks very much. I think in summary, it's been a really busy 12 months for all of us, during which, as an organisation, CUBO in particular, feel we've worked really hard to promote opportunities to share insight, to collaborate, and to connect. And as a member organisation, I guess one of our fundamental reasons for being is to deliver services to our members that meet their requirements. But we can only do that if you engage with us. So again, I guess a blanket call to say, please reach out, please contribute to the benchmarking activity in particular over the course of the next few weeks, and please help us and join with us in helping to shape CUBO as we navigate our way through the next few years. So it genuinely is really important, and we don't have all of the answers. We are literally all ears, quite happy to have conversations. So I'm just looking at the Q&A. We don't have any questions, Joe, you'd be pleased to hear, I guess, at this point in time. So given we are almost bang on the money in terms of the first 30 minutes for the first session, I'm going to draw it to a close. I would request that everybody doesn't disappear completely. We still have the opportunity to utilize the chat feature. We still have the meeting hub. So if you're not immediately rushing to cram anything in over the course of the next 15 minutes before the morning's first principal session, then please reach out to colleagues and partners. I think we'll draw it to a close there, and I look forward to seeing as many of you as possible at session 1, and that kicks off at 9:45 a.m. and that's our session that relates to the impact of the higher wage economy. So thanks everybody, and have a good day.
Hello, my name is Erin Cook, and I'm the National Account Executive for Warwick Event Services. I've been with Warwick for a little over 2.5 years now, and my focus is working with our clients all over the UK. With a head office in Exeter, an exhibition hub in Edinburgh, and as you can probably tell, our office in Belfast, this means that we cover all areas of the UK, including London, the Midlands, and Wales. We deliver exceptional events wherever you are. We are your technical team for this year's winter conference, and we are delighted to be back after delivering a successful summer conference back in June. I am joined by a number of my technical team members today who are working away in the background to ensure that the exciting and vital content from our speakers today is shared with you seamlessly. So who are Warwick Event Services? Well, I'm sure that many of you have met us before, whether it be at a conference, an exhibition, or right here on a virtual platform. We specialise in bringing people together through both online and offline communications. I like to call our team a one-stop production shop. With the vast majority of our equipment and knowledge being in-house, we pride ourselves in being able to scale up and scale down our expertise to meet your requirements. You may be putting together a 20-stand exhibition in a sports hall or a graduation ceremony for 1,200 outside in a marquee. There may be a gap of knowledge in health and safety, or perhaps there are electrical requirements that require a generator. We do it all under one roof. From a production and conference standpoint, we specialise in LED technology, conference setup, silent conferencing, seminars, and networking spaces. We have loved nothing more than being back on site in 2021, all over the UK alongside our colleagues in the industry. As with many in the industry, we have continually built on our virtual and hybrid services. This is something we have always offered, but have worked tirelessly as a team in the last 18 months to really develop what we give our clients. With at least one virtual event every week for the past 3 months, and representing my hometown of Belfast with an international hybrid conference, I'm extremely proud of what we have achieved in a difficult period in all of our lives. Obviously, today is a great opportunity for us to showcase our virtual services to you all, but we also offer so much more. Additionally to CUBO, with our conference and exhibition services, we have built up great partnerships in the industry. 2021 was a very difficult year for both the events industry and the university sector, which many of you will fall into both of those categories. As we rebuild, I am delighted to say that our 2022 diary is looking a lot brighter than the past 2 years, and I hope you can all nod your heads in agreement to that. We are an extremely resilient industry. I would welcome the opportunity to speak to you about how we can support you and your team in the year 2022. My email address is coming across the bottom of the screen, so please do not hesitate to take note of this and get in touch. I look forward to getting to know some of you a little more, and please enjoy the CUBO Winter Conference 2021.
Good morning again, and welcome to CUBO Winter Conference 2021 and our first initial session entitled The Impact of the Higher Wage Economy. So it gives me great pleasure to thank our 3 contributors today. So I have Ben Jones, the Principal Economist from the CBI, Geraint Johns, Emeritus, teeth in Phil, Professor of Economics, Lancaster University Management School, and Hayley Minton, Business Sector Director for the Management Recruitment Group. So thank you all for volunteering your time today. It's very much appreciated. A little bit of housekeeping from myself before we enter into the full detail of the session. So thank you to our sponsors who, without their support, we can't hold these sorts of events. So in no particular order, great thanks go to Campus Life, to Co-op Franchise, to Quadient, to Warwick Event Services, who you just heard from, to StarRes and to Unite Students. Just a gentle reminder that these sessions are being recorded and will be shared after the event. So for those of our colleagues and members who are unable to attend will be able to access the detail, which is great. We have a Twitter competition ongoing over the course of today. So please, for those prolific tweeters, get yourself onto Twitter, utilize the hashtag CUBO Winter 2021. That's CUBO Winter 2021. And the winner of the competition will be announced at the back end of the day in the final session. As always with these sorts of events, so your input is really valued. So please utilize the Q&A portion on the website, and please ask any questions that come up over the course of this session in particular, but any of the subsequent sessions over the course of the day. So we also have a chat feature called the discussion forum, and there's the ability through the meeting hub link to interact with colleagues and partners. So please take the opportunity to do that also. Be very much appreciated. So in respect of the impact of the higher wage economy session, so I guess we're all aware of Boris Johnson. So none more so than over the course of the last 24 hours in the news again, probably for all the wrong reasons again. So, but Boris's vision is to transform our economy with a new model of high wages, high skills, and high productivity. So, but will it work? And I think the question is to be pondered in terms of that. So, will it be made redundant by higher cost of living? What if salaries don't rise at the correct rate and are not justified by the gains in productivity? There are a number of potential quick wins for productivity in the UK, and there may be a role for higher education to play in that. So clearly, I am by no means an expert, but we do have 3 experts in that field. And at this point in time, I'd like to hand back over to my WES colleagues, and we'll hear from 3 of our contributors.
Hello, my name is Ben Jones, and I'm an economist in the CBI's Economics Directorate. In the next few minutes, I'm going to give a very brief overview of the state of the UK economy. I've put together a few charts to illustrate some of the challenges currently being reported by our members. So let's start with a snapshot of the recovery so far. Our view of the UK economy at the moment can best be described as cautiously positive. Positive because activity has recovered strongly since the economy reopened, and the economic damage has been much less than was feared early on in the pandemic, particularly in terms of unemployment, which thanks to furlough has remained historically quite low throughout. But the reopening of the economy has not been plain sailing. Labour shortages and supply challenges are causing disruption across many sectors, and these are slowing down the recovery. Overall, it's fair to say that the easy bit is now behind us. Growth peaked over the summer and has slowed in recent months as the initial reopening boost faded. You can see from the chart on the left that as of September, the economy was still around 0.5% smaller than it was in February 2020. Output in some sectors has crept above its pre-pandemic levels. Unsurprisingly, people delivering health services have been especially busy. Retail and wholesale have generally performed well over the pandemic as people switch from spending from close contact services to buying goods, especially online. And since the summer, we've seen a very strong recovery in spending in hospitality, which was initially one of the hardest hit sectors. Now, on the flip side, some sectors are clearly struggling. In particular, this includes sectors exposed to changes in travel or working patterns, such as airlines and other transport companies, office and facilities management, and city centre businesses, such as dry cleaners and so on. With more than a third of us still working from home for at least some of the week, the recovery for some businesses is going to lag behind the wider economy. Another major factor slowing the recovery is the supply constraints being reported by manufacturers across the developed world, including the UK. The chart on the left shows how supplier delivery times have reached historic levels. On the right, we have our manufacturing survey, which shows the share of UK manufacturers citing input shortages has reached its highest level since 1975. And across the world, the story is the same. As economies have reopened, there's been a surge in demand for materials and inputs such as semiconductors and metals, timber or cement. We've seen rocketing prices for space on cargo ships, which has been made worse by port congestion in some key markets. And labour shortages have been reported in many economies as migration has slowed and health concerns have kept key groups of people at home. Shortages of drivers has been a particular problem, and not just in the UK. All of this is leading to rising backlogs of work across the developed world as firms struggle to keep up with demand. And business surveys suggest that firms expect the disruption to last till at least the second half of next year. Supply disruptions have pushed up prices for the effective goods and services, although the pressure does now seem to be easing a bit. Global prices for commodities such as metals, timber and agricultural goods had doubled by the spring of this year, but they've actually come down a little bit since. But just as these prices began to ease, energy prices spiked, though these two have peaked in recent weeks. There are also encouraging signs that shipping costs have come down recently. However, the effects of these price pressures are still working their way through the economy. In the UK, producer input prices were up by over 11% in the year to September, and output prices at the factory gate were up by almost 7%. In both cases, this is the fastest increase since 2011. And this is one factor pushing up consumer prices, with inflation rising over 3% in September. The Bank of England now expects inflation to peak at 5% in April next year, before falling gradually back down to its 2% target by 2024. Now, with inflation creeping up, we're already seeing signs that consumer spending has lost some steam in recent months and consumer confidence has slipped. It's almost inevitable that rising inflation and higher energy prices, upcoming tax changes will dent consumer spending power in the short term. But if we look a bit further ahead into next year, we expect the picture to improve. Wage growth has actually picked up surprisingly quickly over the last year. The bank estimates that underlying wage growth is around 4.5% currently and is likely to remain fairly close to this level. And with employment also expected to creep up, household spending should begin to improve again as inflation subsides from the middle of next year. And this should ensure that the overall economic recovery maintains some momentum through 2022. Now, for businesses, conditions in the labour market are proving to be one of the major challenges at the moment, alongside supply chain disruptions. They're also a key uncertainty for economists. On the one hand, since COVID restrictions were lifted, we've seen very strong demand for workers, with indications that the labour market is very tight. The chart on the left shows how vacancies rose to a record high above 1 million over the summer. But on the other hand, there are reasons to think there is still some spare capacity in the labour market. Unemployment, for example, is a little higher than it was going into the pandemic. And crucially, we've also seen a big increase in inactivity. That's people neither employed nor looking for work. And that's particularly among older workers. As of September, we had over 1 million workers still on the furlough scheme when the scheme ended. So all of this is a bit of a puzzle. It might be that the people who could be working don't have the right skills for the available jobs, or that the vacancies and the people who could fill them are in different parts of the country. Or it might be that the overall supply of workers has taken a permanent hit, perhaps because workers from the EU and elsewhere who went home during the pandemic are not coming back, or because health concerns among older workers means they've decided to permanently retire. Only time will tell. Although we're close to being able to answer one of these questions, early indications from surveys suggest that almost 9 out of 10 firms that were using the furlough scheme brought back their workers when the scheme ended at the end of September. Now, this suggests that we're going to see a very limited rise in unemployment, which is a good thing. but it also suggests that the labour market could remain quite tight for the foreseeable future. So I'd like to end by saying a few words on how our members are responding to all of this. Well, in the short term, businesses are looking at targeted wage increases for specific occupations. We've heard of pay increases in the range of 10% to 40% to attract workers in some key sectors or occupations, particularly for drivers or in professional services or for IT workers. But it's worth stressing that overall, our survey data suggests total wage growth for the year ahead is not actually that much higher than it was before the pandemic. The prospect of a higher wage economy is also prompting companies to think more long-term, whether that's through casting the net wider by embracing hybrid and remote working where possible, or looking to train existing workers. Our surveys show firms have stepped up planned spending on training for the year ahead. For example, the chart on the right is from our manufacturing survey. And throughout the pandemic, businesses have been looking to invest in labour-saving technology and streamline processes through IT, whether that's new project scheduling software in construction or robotics in food production. It might be ordering and payment apps in restaurants or professional services firms using IT to automate routine tasks. And given the UK's weak productivity performance over the last decade, all these changes are welcome. But finally, there are some things that we think the government could do to help smooth the transition to a more labour-constrained future. For example, by targeting its skills inventions more closely to help tackle key skill shortages, or perhaps we will continue to push for a more agile and responsive immigration system. So we're filling those gaps that the UK's own labour market is struggling to meet. Now that's about all I want to say for now. Overall, the picture is mixed. Across the world, we have seen a remarkable consumer-led recovery supported by the vaccine rollout. And it was perhaps inevitable that the recovery from such a synchronized global shock would mean we'd quickly run into the speed limit. But the outlook does remain much better than we would have thought even a year ago. Thank you for listening.
Hello, it's a pleasure to be with you at the CUBO conference today. I'm going to talk a little bit about the higher wage economy and the implications of that for higher education. Now, the higher wage economy is something that was very much flagged in the Conservative Party conference a few weeks ago. And there was a lot of talk about the need for higher wages. I can remember clearly Dominic Raab being interviewed on the Today programme on the day that Boris Johnson gave his party speech. And Raab was talking about that we need to move away from reliance on cheap foreign labour. And this mantra of cheap foreign labour came through time and time again in Raab's interview. Now, the implications of not relying on cheap foreign labour is, of course, that you either rely on cheap domestic labour, which is something that no government is going to want to take credit for, or you're going to be relying on more expensive domestic labour. And that's where the push towards higher wages comes from. The problem is, of course, that higher wages have to be paid for somehow. And they are either paid for by an increase in prices, and we've seen something of this already with the higher wages being paid to HGV drivers in response to the shortage of the drivers of lorries. That has to push up the price of provision unless there is an increase in productivity. So really the push for higher wages is a push for higher productivity. But the government has been much more silent on the solutions to the productivity problem than it has been on the push for higher wages. So there's a danger here that rhetoric might lead to price inflation, and that is something that we have to be aware of. The cure is, of course, increased productivity. That means increasing the amount of output that each unit of input produces, that each hour of labour produces. And achieving that was a major goal of Theresa May's government through the industrial strategy. And there are many possible solutions that have come out of that to the productivity problem that we have in the UK. So really the focus of my talk today is going to be about the role for higher education in this. And I see three areas that I'd like to explore. One is equipping people with the right skills, making sure that our graduates are employable and that they're employable in high productivity professions. Secondly, updating and renewing the skills of people who may have been through higher education before in their lives or may not have done. Certainly lifelong learning is a buzzword that has come into the discussion time and time again over the years, but we've never really got to grips with it in higher education. And thirdly, an issue that I'll refer to as matching supply and demand in the market for skills, in the labour market. This is something that we do particularly poorly in the UK. And I'll talk a little about this in the context of higher education and the role that our career services might be able to play in improving the matches between employees on the one hand and employers on the other. So first of all, let's look at skills. And we know a lot about which degrees offer the highest returns, the highest economic returns to graduates. If we look at the earnings that graduates of different disciplines make relative to the earnings that they could have made if they had entered the labour market straight from school, then there are clear differences across disciplines. And this is some work that the Institute of Fiscal Studies has done in collaboration with many others, including my Lancaster colleague, Ian Walker, looking at the differences across disciplines here in the returns that you get to a higher education degree. And the highest returns are achieved in subjects like economics, medicine, maths, engineering, physics. These are all quantitative subjects. They offer employment opportunities at high wage levels to graduates. On the other hand, you've got subjects down at the bottom end of the earnings distribution. Creative arts is one, nursing, psychology, sociology, communications, English communications, often goes by the name of media studies. These are all less remunerative in terms of the jobs that people tend to go to after they've graduated. And indeed, at the bottom end of the distribution, graduates in some of these disciplines earn less than they might have earned if they had entered the labour market straight from school. So there's huge heterogeneity across different disciplines and the skills that are embedded within those disciplines. We also know something about the returns to different skills that students may acquire while they're at university in an extracurricular way. So there are employability courses they might go into that are not part of their degree, but which are kind of add-ons to their degrees. And we know that a lot of these skills give positive returns and sometimes quite high positive returns as well. So numeracy, particularly for students that are on courses involving disciplines that are not the more quantitative disciplines, numeracy, entrepreneurship, skills in spoken communication particularly, all of these are highly remunerative. Other skills, much less so. So the scope for us in higher education to target better the skills that are delivered, both in terms of the skills within disciplines, but also extracurricular skills, the development of these employability skills that are important to our students. So the first question I would like to pose here is, what scope is there for the employability programs that we have, distinct from the academic programs, to reflect more closely the rewards that are given to different types of skills in the labour market, and making sure that the graduates that we produce are more productive because they have the right employability skills. Secondly, I want to talk about renewal, and particularly the renewal of skills through the life cycle. Over the last couple of decades, skill-biased technical change, that is automation, the development of robotics, artificial intelligence, has changed the demand for skills in the labour market, and it's had the effect of hollowing out the labour market so that intermediate skills are less in demand than skills at either extreme of the skills distribution. So in the graph that we've got on the screen at the moment, we've got occupations that are ranked by the average wage in those occupations, reflecting the power of skills, the amount of skill needed in order to perform the tasks in those occupations. So here at the right, we've got the most highly skilled occupations. On the left, we've got the lowest skilled occupations. And what the graph shows is that in relative terms, the demand for the highest skills has increased at the very top end very substantially over the years since 1979. At the bottom end, the demand for skills has also increased. So the least skilled occupations, very often these are occupations in the care sector, they have increased as well. And in the case of the care sector, that's clearly a demographic thing with the aging of the population. But in the middle of the skills distribution, the demand has actually fallen. So these are the jobs that have been replaced by technology. And that is set to continue. So there's work by Carl Benedict Frey and Michael Osborne that suggests that between 40 and 50% of jobs are threatened over the medium term, the next 15 years or so, by automation. And those jobs are predominantly those in the middle of the skills distribution. So this leaves a lot of workers, those that are here in the middle of the skills distribution and threatened with displacement by technology. Those workers have their jobs threatened. They're workers who already have intermediate skills. A little bit of extra tuition, like extra training, could shift them into an ability to do these higher skilled jobs rather than seeing them drop down into the very lowest skilled jobs. And one of the key things for productivity and raising wages generally in the UK economy over the next 15, 20 years is going to be to make sure that we make the right investment, find the right people to make those investments in, to convert them into high-skilled workers, highly productive workers. So what role can higher education play in identifying, first of all, identifying older workers that could benefit from such investment in their skills? And what role can higher education play in actually providing the training that they need in order to become high-skilled workers? The returns to such investment could be huge. Thirdly, I want to talk about matching in the labour market. Now, the UK labour market performs very poorly in matching worker skills to the skill requirements of employers. This came home very forcibly to me, and I'm sure to many of you, with the large numbers of Eastern European migrants that came to the UK over the last couple of decades, and how we probably all met taxi drivers who were previously in very high skilled jobs in their home countries. And they've moved to lower skilled jobs in the UK. They've not been matched with jobs that truly reflect their potential to be productive in the UK economy. That's true also for domestic UK people, indigenous UK citizens. On some measures, and I must stress that this is only on some measures, the most extreme measures, about a half of people in the UK report themselves as being overeducated for the work that they're doing. Now, this could be an overestimate in the sense that as an academic, I do my own photocopying. Now, that's not a full use of my skills, clearly. And it may be that people are responding and saying that they're overeducated if that kind of thing is happening in their jobs. But around a half are reporting themselves as overeducated. That means they're mismatched in the labour market. They're not performing to their full potential in terms of being as productive as they possibly could be in the labour market. Amongst graduates, the figure is even higher. And that is in sharp contrast with other countries. So something that could be done in the UK to improve productivity would be to improve the quality of that match. Now, there is some evidence that matching improves with age, it's less prevalent in large firms than elsewhere, but nevertheless, the need to improve matching of skills with the demand for skills is crucial to solving the productivity shortfall in the UK. And it begs the question, really, what can be done by higher education institutions? How can career services in higher education institutions improve the match between their graduates and the needs of the firms that the graduates go and work in? And can higher education expertise be used more widely still in the labour market to improve labour market matching? So there are, I think, many opportunities for higher education. And higher education, of course, itself is a productivity enhancer. One of the major reasons we have education is to increase the amount of, if you like, human capital that people possess, and therefore increase their productivity. But there are ways that we could work smarter in how we deliver this. And that's what I've tried to focus on. And that's what I hope we will focus on more in the discussion that follows. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Hayley from the Management Recruitment Group. We specialise in appointing mid to senior hires in university, commercial services and accommodation services. Just wanted to give you some insights into the current recruitment situation and give some opportunities around challenges and things that we can do to attract the best possible talent into the sector. With the backdrop of Brexit and a global pandemic, summer 2021 saw us witnessing a number of headlines around recruitment and staffing shortages. One that sticks out for me is heavy goods drivers being paid more than CEOs. Whilst this isn't a true statement, it reminds us of the economic landscape that we're currently facing. Candidates are aware that there are plenty of opportunities. They are now more demanding than ever in their requirements, and there are fewer people to choose from in any hiring process. The Telegraph recently reported that a quarter of UK firms are reporting unfulfilled positions, affecting their ability to operate and grow their businesses. Employees and business owners the world alike felt on the back foot since the start of the pandemic. But as 2021 winds down, there is a push to adapt and adopt new hiring processes, with a number of recruitment trends emerging in every sector. This is a chance for higher education to promote the opportunity that the sector has to offer and to value the talented professionals can bring. For mid to senior hires into university business services, we're often looking to attract individuals from outside the sector. This is, after all, what brings fresh innovation and a new perspective. However, it's not easy to attract these individuals in today's market. They are faced with an abundance of opportunities, and we're competing on a number of different areas. There's a number of things that we can think about in order to attract the best possible talent. The first is flexible working. It is here to stay. A recent IBM survey reported that a third of all workers are looking for a blended approach. This involves working from home and working in the office. Things that you need to consider before going into any hiring process is the role itself, the visibility you require on campus, what's going to work for the team and what's going to work for the university. It's then important to be open and transparent about this early on from the process. This really does help attract the best possible talent. It can't be an ad hoc arrangement because that can cause problems, and going into a hiring process, people want to know what's expected of them. The other area to consider is broadening our horizons. Traditional talent pools are exhausted. There's not necessarily all the skill sets in every single area to find the perfect candidate anymore. So we have to be a bit more flexible and look at some of the soft skills that are required. Communication, problem solving, and collaboration have always been important, but in a post-pandemic world, these are almost non-negotiable. MRG have been working with Thomas International to do psychometric testings for a number of their hires. This looks more in depth at the candidates' personality profiles. Do they have the right traits and attributes to work in a university and be successful? This can often mean that candidates that you wouldn't necessarily explore are the candidates that are appointed for and ultimately successful in the role. Then there's the marketing and promotion of roles. Out-of-sector candidates often fully don't understand the complexity of a university, the scope of the roles and what they'll be involved in, and what they can offer. The complexity of many campuses means that the roles are really exciting and not something that you'd compete with in the private sector, but you need to showcase this. It's about showcasing the vision, the impact that this role has on the student population, but also on the university business. Traditional job boards don't really attract high quality candidates anymore. Most people are looking to be approached, to be engaged as part of the process, to actually speak to somebody about their concerns before putting in formal application. Social media is a fantastic tool to use this. And in fact, 85% of companies now use this as their sole platform. Moving into 2022, there is no doubt that we have to adjust our traditional methods when engaging and sourcing candidates, making sure that we are visible in an increasingly competitive and volatile market. There's a number of challenges that we see in the university sector. One that's very topical at the moment is salaries and benefit packages. Salaries are undoubtedly rising. We are seeing an increase in counteroffers and candidates being engaged in multiple processes. This does pose a problem for universities, especially when at the moment, the top of the band is being used for a number of appointments. We are increasingly seeing the use of market supplements being added, although I'm not sure this is a long-term solution or ultimately sustainable for any universities. Performance-related pay and bonus structure are very commonplace in the private sector and are starting to be seen within higher education. It's certainly something that we have seen within purpose-built student accommodation for a number of years. It's something that we should start considering within higher education. I don't know whether it's a long-term solution, but it certainly makes it more competitive when looking at candidates from traditional markets like hospitality and leisure services. Other benefits such as private healthcare are also standard in the private sector, but yet not many higher education institutes offer this. So it's hugely important to showcase the benefits that are available, such as the enhanced holiday, the pension benefits, further studies, discount on campus for food and beverage, advanced family leaves. These are all really attractive benefits, but often not showcased and hidden on a university website in a pay and remuneration sector. These should be at the forefront of any adverts and really communicated very openly to candidates because they're a huge attraction. Then there's the process. We often know that university processes can be quite long-winded and involve a number of stakeholders going around the table. However, professionals from hospitality and leisure sectors have never experienced this type of interview process. This can be quite daunting, even at a senior level. We've been encouraging hiring managers to use virtual platforms such as Zoom and Teams to engage candidates at initial informal interviews. This enables candidates to really get to the skin of the role and what's happening underneath, but also build that an early rapport with the hiring manager, which is really important before entering into a formal panel process. In terms of moving forward, it has to be really well managed. Candidates have many opportunities on the table, and if you're dragging your heels or the process is taking a long period of time, you can lose people to other offers and other companies that are moving at pace to get the candidates secured. It's really important that from the early off stages, if there are multiple interview processes, this is communicated as part of your process, dates are in people's diaries, and as much as possible these are stuck to so that candidates know the expectation from them and can fully commit to the process. There are a number of positives though. Higher education is still a great sector to work and presents a wealth of opportunity for individuals. Retention numbers are generally high, and once you start working in the sector, you often look at other opportunities still within the sector. The sector has always excelled in providing excellent opportunities for training and development and providing a more favourable work-life balance than the traditional private sectors. In an inspiring place to work, you want to be part of a mission, a future, something that contributes to the local community, to the young people. And I, for one, am really excited to see the next phase of evolution as we welcome in the Z generation. And
Welcome back, everybody. So some really interesting insight there from our three contributors. So thank you very much. It's appreciated. So I guess in terms of my observations and general comments before we enter into Q&A, I think there was probably a general fear across the board that furlough would lead to or return from furlough would lead to rising unemployment, but that appears at this point to have been groundless. So it's quite interesting to see what happens over the course of the next few months. So and I think there's potentially some benefit in terms of the overall increase in terms of wages, particularly when we end up with gains in sectors where low pay and poor conditions would have led to a chronic over-reliance in the short term, I guess, on imported labour. And I guess we have the challenges layered over the top in terms of Brexit and the fact that actually we're going to have to fish in different pools going forward. So some really interesting insights. So thank you very much. In respect of questions, so I'm going to have a shout out to everyone that's on the call listening in and has been listening for the last 45 minutes or so. If you do have any questions at this point, please do add them to the Q&A section on the website. So, but I certainly have a few. So, and Ben, I'm going to come to you actually first, if that's okay. So, the risk of throwing you a hospital pass. So, and I'm going to focus on the whole furlough worker piece. So, is there any insight at all that gives us a sense of the proportion of furloughed workers who've returned to part-time roles rather than full-time roles? And as a consequence, that's sort of in the background manipulating the figure so it doesn't look quite as bad as it might do under circumstances?
That's a really tricky one. Thanks for starting off with that one. I mean, what we do know from the HMRC data is that I think about half the number of people who were on furlough when the scheme ended in September were on part-time. You know, so I guess your question is how many of those might have come back into those roles, or how many actually might have come back and increased their hours as a means of, you know, boosting labour supply. I don't think we have the data for that yet. The thing about labour market data is it lags behind by a couple of months. You know, by early next year we may be able to answer those questions. But I do think, I mean, you absolutely picked up on the fact that, you know, if you were to wind back a year, we were talking, you know, even the government's official sort of forecaster, the OBR, was talking about unemployment rates above, you know, well above 10%. And the fact is, we've probably already seen unemployment peak during this pandemic. So there's no doubt furlough scheme has been absolutely fundamental in keeping unemployment low. And it might be that firms just, you know, they've seen the strength of demand when the economy is reopened, and they kept those workers on furlough with the full intention of bringing them back as a kind of form of labour hoarding, basically. And securing, you know, to make sure they had enough workers. Now, you know, whether or not they've brought them back into their, you know, previous roles, or whether or not they've shifted them around into other roles, I don't know. We just have to wait and see.
Okay, that's great.
It's a definite positive, though. One of the major successes of the pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. I guess my counter to that would be that I suspect all of us who've got kids there will continue to be paying for that for a number of years in the future, won't they, through either direct or stealth taxes and the like, because there is an inevitability around when you're spending that amount of cash, somebody
absolutely
needs to pay it back.
Absolutely.
That's great, thank you. Geraint, I have a question for you, if I may. So you referenced employability programs and referenced that skill matching in particular is critical. Given we operate some pretty large businesses across HE and FE, how best do you think we can support, you know, on an individual basis, on a university by university basis, and add sort of further value through into the student experience? Is there anything that we can do specifically on a local basis?
I think my main concern here is about graduates in those subjects that are at the bottom end of the distribution in terms of the returns to their education. So those that we saw in that graphic that were in creative arts, in communication and so on, where the returns are in some cases negative, and the idea of people paying their fees and their maintenance over 3 years or more of an undergraduate degree and then getting negative returns at the end of the day is pretty horrific. So I think the question is, how do we best equip these people with the type of skills that we know have value in the market? So you may be going out into a career that may be in the area of media or creative arts, but how do you equip these students with skills that give them that extra bit of oomph, that maybe the quantitative skills that would help them as they progress through a creative arts career into management, for example, where they need to be able to read spreadsheets, read accounts, and so on, so that you're equipping them not only to start well, but to progress well as they go through their careers. So what are the pretty simple fixes that we can equip them with? Extracurricular, that can help in terms of their employability, but also of their progression. And it might be something where we need to look not only at what we deliver while the students are with us full time, but what support we give to our alumni through their careers as well. We're really bad at lifelong learning, and technology is moving us along so quickly. People aren't going to have one career in the future. They're going to need to morph as they go through. And so we need a relationship between the university and the alumni of a kind we've not seen before. And we need a relationship between the university and business of a kind we've not seen before. Indeed, I think the distinction between higher education institutions and businesses needs to be completely redefined, and the distinction needs to be much less visible.
That's great. Thank you very much. Hayley, in the interest of giving everybody the opportunity to talk, so I have a question. Just looking on the Q&A session that's come up. So there would be, I think, I guess I don't know whether you'll be able to answer this or not, but do you have any sense where's the financial investment coming from, and where's it being sourced from by individual organizations to match the expectation in terms of sort of these increasing wage costs, particularly in industries that have been adversely affected over the last couple of years? So where's the magic money tree, I guess? So, is it sustainable?
I don't know where the magic money tree is at the moment. People do just seem to be finding additional salary increases, and I guess they're weighing out the productivity levels that we talked about earlier and whether that is going to add value to their business in the longer term. And certainly in higher education, we're seeing people that are having to ride that cost initially in the short term, but hopefully that will return rewards in the longer term across commercial services and income generating services. So it's definitely a challenging one, but I don't see it stopping anytime soon, unfortunately.
No, absolutely. So I've got a question from Dave Perry. Actually, I'll throw this one out, and then I suspect we're probably going to have to bring this session to a close. What I would say, actually, in terms of the questions that we haven't answered, we will relay those to the panel and get some answers back out over the course of the next week or so. But Dave's question is there likely impact of rising wages in low skill roles rise in the cost of living? So if anyone has a view on that particularly.
Yes.
Succinct.
You can see it already. Open the paper.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, that's great. I'm going to draw it to a close. We're 2 minutes over, and I'm just conscious of everybody's time and conscious that we are probably going to butt into another session. So I'd like to thank Hayley, Geraint, and Ben for your contribution. Again, it's really appreciated. So we can't do these sessions without contributors, and your insights were particularly interesting and useful for this session specifically. So in regards again to, oh no, it's happened. I warned that this might happen. I'm sitting in an office with a PIR. It has about 12 minutes on it and it's gone out. So we have paid the electricity bill, honestly. So it was inevitable, wasn't it? So never mind. So thank you again for the contributors. Thanks everybody for joining the session and listening over the course of the last 45 minutes. So please don't disappear in your entirety. We have another session that will kick off in about 10 minutes or so at 1:45, and that's insights from HEPI into the future of HE. So please do join us for that, and thanks again one and all, much appreciated.